Welcome to the Haunted Hangover podcast. I'm Louie, and as always, I'm joined by my bud Dave.
Hello, everyone.
So, Dave.
So, Lewis.
Valentine's Day is around the corner.
Yep.
And we're going to change things up in this episode and cover a Valentine's Day themed slasher flick. But it's not the one or two that most people think. There aren't many Valentine's Day themed, I think, films in general, besides My Bloody Valentine and Valentine, even like non-horror. I can't think of too many Valentine's Day themed films. Can you?
Is it The Prowler a Valentine's Day movie? Or
is it?
I don't know. It might be.
I thought it was like a mermaid party or some shit.
Or like, I could be wrong.
Yeah, but like even non-horror, I can't think of many films that people watch around Valentine's Day. Especially like in the horror community, it's the same too. You see fucking Harry Warden, right? Mm-hmm. The original. And then the remake. That's usually what people like watch.
What year did My Bloody Valentine come out?
Off the top of my head, I think it's 1980. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to fact check right here while we're recording. Let's see.
All right. I'll do the news music.
Let's see. So, My Bloody Valentine. 1981. So this came out the same year.
Yep.
This movie we're going to be covering came out the same year as the OG My Bloody Valentine.
There's a reason why I asked.
And the funny thing is, the original, the OG My Bloody Valentine, came out a few days before the actual holiday. When comparing it to this film, which when we get to the breakdown, I'll say what the release date for this film was a few months later. It was way after Valentine's Day. But that's enough rambling about Valentine's Day themed films.
Sure.
And let's jump into the film we're going to be talking about, which has many names. And I'm gonna run down them here in the intro before I go into the breakdown. And we're going to be covering X-Ray, a.k.a. Hospital Massacre, a.k.a. Ward 13, a.k.a. Be My Valentine.
This is going the Tommy Valley route.
Yes, it's got just as many names as Tommy Valley.
The results are inconclusive. We have to run some more tests.
But this whole checkup is just
A what?
a simple formality. I've been promoted and I just need some sort of medical certificate for my new insurance.
No checkup is ever just a simple formality, Miss Jeremy.
So X-Ray was released on April 23rd in 1981. Nowhere near Valentine's Day. Like I said, it's technically, it came out after My Bloody Valentine, so My Bloody Valentine's got the one up when it comes to Valentine's Day themed horror films because it was released a few days shy, like I said.
Sure.
It was directed by, as usual, I'm going to fucking butcher this, Boaz Davidson.
Okay.
B-O-A-Z is his first name.
Yeah.
Boaz Davidson.
Boaz Davidson sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it is a unique director's name. It's a cool director's name. Funny enough, this dude hasn't really done, like, he's directed a bunch of shit, but nothing really popped out to me when I looked at his filmography. He did produce the Expendable films and the most recent Rambo films, like the last two to come out. So Boaz has a relationship with Sly Stallone, which is
all right,
funny.
Boaz, we see you.
That's an interesting career choice to kind of go from making these weird, I guess this weird movie, and then in the 2000s working with Stallone on these fucking cheesy ass action films. He's making bread. Okay. I guess that's all that matters. My man still has a career in 2020, 2010. When was the last Stallone, the last Rambo movie, I mean? Like,
I have no fucking clue.
3 years ago, I think there was a new Rambo movie. It stars Barbie Benton, which sounds like Spider-Man's girlfriend. I just love how this actress has the name Barbie Benton. And I think I know why that's her name, because she's a Playboy cover model 4 times.
Okay. I can see that.
She was a Playboy cover girl 4 times. So she was very popular. She also dated Hugh Hefner. So she was calling the shots. She was calling the shots in that at the mansion.
So 2 things I gotta drop on y'all. This movie was slapped together, if you will, to cash in on the slasher boom that was happening.
100%. 1981, a year after Friday the 13th, a few years after Halloween.
Yep.
I feel like these were the 80 to 85, 86 are the prime slasher years. I feel like all horror films during this time were these type of movies.
Yeah.
But Barbie Benton, besides this movie, she really didn't do much of anything else. She's in this one movie called Death Stalker, which is like a fantasy swords and dragons type movie.
Oh, that movie's awesome.
It is. I love it. That's the other thing I know her from. And then Hee Haw, the show Hee Haw.
I had Death Stalker on VHS right next to me over there. Well, I have to dig for it.
Death Stalker, it's a great movie. I haven't watched it in a while, but I don't know how many people know Death Stalker. So
okay,
it's the ultimate power metal movie, or that's what it fucking reminds me of.
Yeah, it's got a Frazetta looking cover and everything. Yeah. It's
That's what I'm thinking, fucking Dio or some shit, something along those lines when you look at the cover of Death Stalker. But yeah, that's Barbie Benton's career. Another actor in this, in a very brief role, is Billie Jane, who starred in Cujo, Nightmares, and Buddy from Just One of the Guys.
Thank you. I was going to say that. Yep.
So it's funny, he's barely in this movie. He was obviously very young, and he's only in 2 seconds of this movie. But you got to start somewhere, you know?
Sure.
Side note, Nightmares and Just One of the Guys and Bloody Birthday are all fucking awesome movies. I fucking love Nightmares and Just One of the Guys.
And the little girl that's in the beginning of this film with him were both in the movie Bloody Birthday.
That's an interesting fact, because those two, I don't know when Bloody Birthday off the top of my head was released, but it's got to be around the same time.
This.
Yeah, but it's got to be right close
before this, and then they paired the kids again, but I mean it was very short this pairing because they're only in it for a few minutes.
Yeah, so. It is funny how they're both in Bloody Birthday, which is all the kids in that movie have huge roles. They're the main characters. They're the fucking crazy killer kids. Great movie. All right, so let's dive into the breakdown of X-Ray. So the film begins in 1961. We meet Susan Jeremy, who sits playing with her friend David. I know a David.
What up?
Another boy, Harold, watches from a nearby window. I always got a kick out of that name, Harold. Sounds like a creep. Sounds like a
Harold
little
and
shit.
Maude.
Harold and Maude, yeah, that's another. We're naming all the great movies on this episode. Funny enough, even though we're talking about X-Ray, Harold again watches from the window. He sneaks in and leaves Susan a Valentine, one of those homemade ones you'd leave your crush as a kid.
Yep.
Both Susan and David come across the Valentine. I forget why they leave the room, but they leave the room. Susan leaves the room a couple times, but they leave the room briefly, come back, and they find the Valentine, read it, make fun of it like a couple of shitty kids, crumble it up as Harold watches on. Susan, very rude. Susan leaves the room to cut a piece of cake with a giant machete, I might add. Yo, dude, I have to pause the breakdown to talk about this for 2 seconds. What a ridiculous fake out. Did you fucking she pulls out a machete to cut a cake.
There's a lot of weird foreshadowing things that make no sense in this movie.
The movie is full of that, but I just love how, like, off the bat, in the beginning, there's a massive fake out, and it's ridiculous. Because who cuts a cake with a ginormous machete, especially if you're like 8 years old? Susan.
There's your answer.
I think she's the real fucking psycho of this movie. And in hindsight, when you think about it, I might be right. So she comes back into the room and discovers her friend David dead, hanging from like a hat coat type rack stand. He's just hung there, dead. She screams in terror, and we jump 19 years. We learn that Susan is recently divorced. She has a young daughter and a new boyfriend named Jack. On Valentine's Day, Jack takes Susan to the hospital so she can get her results from a routine checkup. The reason she's getting this checkup, something about she needs new health insurance or she's requesting new health insurance from a new job, something along those lines. It's kind of quickly brushed over the reason why she's doing this, but it's not the most important. It's basically the checkup is just like a whatever checkup.
I'm dropping a bit of trivia right here, and this movie was filmed in an abandoned hospital.
That's pretty cool. And it makes sense why they do so much with the building. Like, you could tell they had complete control over like the location. They could do basically whatever they want. It looks like it.
100%.
Inside the same hospital you just mentioned, we witness a creepy doctor dressed in full scrubs and surgical mask like we all know and love in 2022. He watches Susan from a window.
It's true.
And he caresses a photo of a young Susan and proceeds to delay Susan's stay in the hospital by killing any doctor, nurse, and even her new boyfriend Jack in the process. I don't want to get into Jack's death just yet because I want to talk about that later. The killer even messes with her exams and paperwork, keeping her in the one thing after another. This fucking surgical mask wearing killer continues to just fuck with Susan. like one after the other. They're just like, you have to stay. You can't go. You have this wrong with you. This is weird. Bugged out shit.
It's really strange.
It is. It's fucking odd. Susan befriends a doctor named Harry who is trying to help her because he notices these strange abnormalities in Susan's paperwork. Something doesn't sit right with him. Surprise, surprise, he vanishes halfway through the movie, and it turns out that Harry is actually Harold, grown up, and he wants revenge because why wouldn't he want fucking revenge? Why wouldn't he want revenge after she crumbled up? She broke his heart. She crumbled up his Valentine almost 20 years prior to this date. A chase ensues. Susan is captured. And we learn that Harold wants to remove Susan's heart. He wants to remove it. And there's this really funny line where Susan, she asks Harold, "What do you want?" And he says, "What I've always wanted, your heart."
He's about to get it.
Literally, he wants to remove her heart for whatever reason. Okay. Eventually, Susan breaks free and is able to use her lighter, which is foreshadowed several times throughout the movie. She lights Harold up in flames like my man was dipped in kerosene. He just engulfed in flames in literally 2 seconds. And he accidentally throws himself off the hospital roof in an attempt to run at Susan. And hits the ground. Harold is dead. The next morning, Susan is reunited with her ex-husband and daughter because they've been worried about her. You cut to them several times throughout the film. Like they're trying to find out what's going on with her. It's a weird subplot. And basically Susan acts like none of this happened. It's just like, all right, some guy tried to kill me. And that was X-Ray.
literally in my notes, the last little bullet point I have in my notes is, dude gets set on fire, runs off into a dark room, then runs back out and falls off a building. Susan leaves like nothing happened and is greeted by her ex-husband and daughter. Finish. That is the ending to this fucking movie.
End of X-Ray.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to keep you here for a while.
Why?
Some discrepancies in the tests.
But
We'll have to keep you under observation for a few days.
is it serious?
No. It's nothing.
You can tell me the truth. Is it serious?
Yeah. It might be.
All right, bud. So we don't shit on movies on the Haunted Hangover.
No, I don't like listening to podcasts that do that either. So we're not going to shit on this, but we are going to discuss our disbelief of this film.
We are going to dive deep into the absurdity that is X-Ray. Now, I agree with you. I don't like when shows shit on things. I get it. Movies are bad sometimes, and it's necessary. As a filmmaker, it's I wrote a slasher film that I don't think has aged very well. When I was 25 years old, it got made. We made it. So, I could never personally be very critical of a movie because I know how much work it takes. And because you've scored films, you know how much work goes into a movie. Right.
It's someone's movie. Now, the reason why earlier I brought up that this movie was basically slapped together is because that's what it is. I mean, it totally feels like that. This movie just feels like it was thrown together to cash in on, on an upcoming genre that everybody would eventually be obsessed with. And it just, they were trying to do a lot of things here, I feel, and it just wasn't executed well.
Yeah. Look, before we jump into negatives, I want to talk about some positives because I think I have more just from our prior texts, like us talking while we were watching this shit.
Sure.
Like off air. I do have there are some positive things. There is some stuff I did like in the movie. And before we completely shit on we're not going to shit on it again, but just talk about some stuff we didn't like and maybe how it could have been done differently and maybe a little more coherent as a film. I'll say this. One of my favorite things about this movie, and this is a small detail, I thought the opening credits were cool with the X-rays. Like just the title sequence, the name of the actors, the director, over actual X-rays. Cool. I can't think of too many other films that have done that. That's a small that's something tiny. It's not a big giant thing that really kind of merits the film being great. But I will say there are a couple of sequences in the film that do have a little bit of tension, and I want your thoughts on this specific scene I'm about to talk about. But the character of Dr. Saxon, he's like the red herring in the movie, and he's a fucking creep. Flat out.
It just doesn't make sense. Like, the way he's written doesn't make any sense.
He's a creep.
And you're trying to, they're trying to guide you that, this is probably him. This is the one that's killing everybody. But it just doesn't, I don't know. It just doesn't, it doesn't fit.
So again, to not shit on Dr. Saxon or the character of Dr. Saxon, the scene where he's examining her and the fucking the breathing and him touching her, all the close-ups of him checking her heartbeat, him extracting blood. It's unnerving, dude. And you see the and I'm not needles don't scare me that much, but when I see them in a movie and you actually see it, I'm like, ugh. I'm not gonna front. The close-ups, it's shot in a way where you're skeeved out. So I did think that scene was effective considering he's not the killer, but they want you to think he is. I thought it was shot, edited well, and is it exploitive of her because she's naked? She didn't need to be topless. She was just, dude, she didn't need to be just topless in the scene.
I have another piece of trivia for you. That scene was the most crowded scene on set when they shot that.
Of course. I'm sure 90% of the crew were men on this fucking movie, and it was the fucking 80s, so I'm sure it was like Creep Fest fucking 2000 on set.
But just to touch back on Dr. Saxon, and by the way, I don't know, I wonder if Dr. Saxon and Dr. Carpenter are supposed to be homages to, you know, John Saxon and John Carpenter. That's
probably.
I kind of wrote down. But almost every character in this movie is a red herring. Like, they give them this weird, ominous characteristic that just doesn't make sense. Like, and I have in my notes, I literally have in my notes multiple times, why is everybody so suspicious? Why is this hospital so weird? And there are points in the movie where, like, the two doctor aides, or whatever you want to call the two women that bring Susan back to her room and subdue her and give her whatever pills, they're like, oh, she's having another seizure. And I thought this film was going to maybe go into a territory where this was all in her head and she was in the hospital the whole time. I would have liked the movie much more if it went that route. But then I kept thinking about it, and I was like, I don't think it's going that route.
Yeah, you could, and they could have easily done that. I feel like
for sure.
The movie, after she kills the killer, and we're kind of bouncing around, the movie just abruptly ends. Like, okay, I'm with my family, I'm happy, and I'm good.
And then her husband's like holding her. Meanwhile, they hate each other.
Yeah,
and then
it's her ex-husband.
You know, like, I'm sorry, her ex-husband. And then, like, in the beginning, like, he tries to give her the daughter to her, and she's like, I can't have her right now. And he's like, and he takes her back, and they just sit in the apartment and wait. Like, it's so weird.
It's a strange, that's why even in my breakdown, I kind of just brushed over that, because it's a strange subplot with her relationship with her ex-husband and the daughter. And they cut back to the daughter several times, like, playing and looking for them. It's, like, weird. It's just very odd. But you mentioned the weird people in the building, and I agree. You know, if this was a serious film, like a movie that was like, when I watched it, I was taking it serious, it would bother me more. But the fact that I know this is a stupid slasher movie, it didn't bother me that much. I actually thought it was kind of amusing. Like, I love that there's just, like, a drunk dude wandering the fucking hospital. There's that weird guy who's, like, creepy as well, pounding down booze. There's, like, and I actually, honestly, there's the three old women. They're, like, pulled straight out of, like, a David Lynch movie. I actually kind of got a kick out of the three. There's the woman with the spoons, the woman with the rosary, and then the one woman with, like, the really, really mean looking grill, who she's just, like, always looking at Susan with, like, a mean face. I thought they felt like they were pulled out of a different movie. It's such an odd choice. Like, was this a sanitarium or a fucking emergency room? Or, like, what is this? Like, what kind of hospital is this?
That's why I kept saying the whole time.
I do agree with that. The concept of making it all be in Susan's head at the end, it would make more sense as to why there's all these strange people in the hospital. And speaking of like hospitals, every person that dies in this movie, besides maybe Jack, and I want to talk about Jack's death scene in a second, and the character of Jack, because I thought it was fucking hysterical. But every character, they introduce them, like you meet Susan's doctor, right? The one that's supposed to have her information, killed. Right. Then you meet like a nurse. And her death scene was pretty cool because like the killer's hiding behind the closet door. When she checks it, she closes the closet, he's there and stabs her. Again, you meet her, dead. The janitor, you meet him, he gets his face melted. And some of the gore is pretty good too, I'm not going to front. It's not extremely gory, but it's got some decent kills in it. But yeah, there's no development. You do not get to know any of these characters. And that kind of like, to me, and I get it, it's a slasher movie, you need a body count, but to me, I love slasher films where there's a little bit of character development. You know, on Patreon, we talked about Halloween 2, which is very reminiscent of this movie. It's better executed, obviously, Halloween 2, with it being set in a hospital, and there's a guy there, obviously Michael Myers, killing people. This is like if I'm trying to think of what's like a really exploitive, like exploitation director. I can't think of one off the top of my head. If like an exploitation director directed Halloween 2, that's what this is. There's zero atmosphere.
Eli Roth?
No, not Eli. One of the like 70s or 80s guys, like Jack Hill or some shit. Maybe like if he directed Halloween 2. But yeah, like in Halloween 2, there's a little bit of character development, and you get to know the characters. You have scenes with them before they die. In this movie, it's like you meet them, they're fucking killed. And even the character of Jack, her current boyfriend, I found it fucking hysterical. But I loved it. How he was just sleeping in the car for 2 fucking hours waiting for her.
Like, you would think maybe she'd run back downstairs and let him and tell him, "Hey, listen, they don't know where my files are. You know, it's gonna be a little while." She just keeps bouncing around like a fucking pinball all over that hospital.
Yeah, like I said, I see what you're saying. How it's just odd choices, but I think for me, like some of these choices are so ridiculous, like him just fucking waiting there, then going into the building and getting killed. Like while he's looking for her. He gets his head cut off and it gets put into a Valentine's Day gift box, which is pretty funny. Like the execution of his death and the reveal that he's dead when she finds the box, and then that she tells the doctors his head's in the box, and then he comes back and it's just a cake. Like it's executed well, and if that kill was in a better made movie with better character development, or even better, more interesting characters, I should say, it would work. Because we've watched, and I know you, because you like slasher movies too, we've watched movies where the kills, like the payoff is so well executed that you care when that character is killed. And in this movie, you don't give a shit about anyone. Except maybe Susan a little bit.
I don't even. I mean, there's no character development to her either. You don't know anything about her. All you know is that she was married and has a kid, and is getting files from something to get a better job or whatever she says. Like it just doesn't have an interesting plot. And by the way, we haven't touched on this yet. It doesn't have anything to do with Valentine's Day. Just because you throw a couple streamers on the wall and a couple hearts doesn't make it a Valentine's Day movie. I mean, like, it doesn't even feel like it.
They could have added a little bit more. I do like the decorations in, like, the waiting room. I think I saw a few, like, and I think in her, like, in the waiting room. And
in some of the rooms, there's, like, hearts and shit.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's like, I feel like they tried to cash in on something that hasn't been done much, and then it just wasn't executed. And by the way, the reason why I brought up My Bloody Valentine before is because there's a scene in the beginning where 3 guys have gas masks on, and I was wondering, I was like, did they just fucking straight up steal this from My Bloody Valentine? Because
weird.
It's too like, really.
You shouldn't be up here, lady. We're fumigating this floor.
But the receptionist downstairs said the 8th floor.
This is the 9th floor. You better get out of here, kiddo. You're gonna get yourself the louse.
Yeah, it's weird. I did catch that too. And then, like, just looking at the release dates, like lining them up, technically, these movies would have been shooting around the same time. So maybe the producers of this movie knew about My Bloody Valentine and they were trying to, I guess, maybe throw shade at them or fuck with them or reference them, which would be an odd decision if you want to, like, one up the only other Valentine's Day themed slasher movie. But but let me jump into another positive or something I liked, because I feel like we're dwelling on a lot of the negative. I will say again, the main thing with me is there are a few tense moments, like I mentioned, with her being undressed and being examined and all that. That's a tense moment. I did also think the scene where, and it's a bit unnerving, is when Susan is hiding behind a, like, curtain divider from the killer while he's holding an axe and heavily breathing, and she's trying to get the lighter with her foot. I thought that scene was well done. I don't know if you remember the scene I'm talking about.
I have it written down. I actually, like, kind of cringed at that scene because I was just, how do you not notice that? Like, you're walking straight ahead and you don't see someone's foot sticking out trying to grab a fucking Zippo?
Now, there's one thing I want to talk about, because I know, when we were texting each other while we were watching this, we said the one major thing this movie's missing is atmosphere. There is fucking none.
And they shot it in an abandoned hospital. You would think that they would, there would have been, and there isn't.
Yeah, there's no interesting lighting.
Nothing.
Everything is kind of flat, extremely bright. Even the kill scenes, they didn't really play with shadows. They didn't really do anything like that with the kills. And it's a bit disappointing because when you watch a slasher film, that's very important. One of the most iconic, again, Halloween, is full of atmosphere. Even Friday the 13th, with the daytime shots, has atmosphere. I don't know why this movie is lacking it. The only exception is that floor. What are they doing? Are they fumigating it?
Yeah, the 9th floor.
Yeah. And the scene where he has her on the operation table and he's going to cut her heart out. They did use lighting. That's really the only two things I could think of where there is some atmosphere. The score sucked. The score's kind of fucking basic.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
And it's just it felt like it was missing something. And you telling me that information about it being kind of rushed and kind of just shit out.
It all makes sense.
It all makes sense, And then it's funny because you mentioned the Halloween, the things. I said Halloween, but Valentine's Day. I mean, decorations. How like it's kind of shoehorned in. It does make sense. And even thinking about it, it's they basically cast this shit. They got like a pretty model girl to be the lead, and we're like, all right, we're just gonna shoot this movie. Get it done. We've got our lead. We've got our abandoned hospital. The killer does look kind of cool. Like I thought, it's kind of not the most interesting killer costume. He's not wearing a mask, but like him wearing like the surgical doctor. The concept of a killer doctor is pretty terrifying. I think most people doctors are supposed to be. It's like the dentist. Most people are supposed to be. Most people have a little bit of a fear of the doctor or doctors.
I love that movie.
Yeah, The Dentist. Yeah, that's a good movie too. But I didn't hate that. I didn't hate his look. I thought it was kind of cool.
All right, a few things here. First off, I'll say this: the older Harry, the doctor, I felt he was the most charismatic character out of the entire cast.
Okay.
And then they made him the killer, but it's so weird because the way he was as the killer, he was so erratic and stiff. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
the way he walked and moved and stuff. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe that's an interesting contrast, but the one thing I have to say is that on the 9th floor, you know what that reminded me of?
What?
It reminded me of Resident Evil 2. In the police, whatever. What's it called? The police.
The Raccoon City Police Station is what you're thinking
department.
of?
The police station. Yeah, there we go. Completely just had a fucking brain fart there.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that. And that was basically the main thing I liked about this movie. And this predates that by so many years.
Yeah.
I did like that. That was something I was like, and even the sound effects. I feel like they put a lot of time into recording sound effects and doing all this stuff around the, movement and the gloves. You always heard squishing latex and stuff like that. I picked up on. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where a lot of it went. A lot of time to me was spent recording all that kind of thing.
The sound design.
Right, the sound design. And the only other thing, the one scene that I absolutely really liked, and I don't even think... Actually, you know what? I shouldn't say that. Maybe it was some sort of artistic, way of shooting this, was when she's running, and she goes into a room, and it's 3 people in body casts, and they're all hanging there, and that was a really good... I like that scene.
Yeah. I don't think that's supposed to be artistic. I think it's just absurd. Look, man, I watched this movie in the way I would watch any kind of hysterically bad movie. That scene was so dumb. It came out of left field. Just these 3 dudes, in body cast hanging there. It's just, ridiculous, Yeah,
well, like I said, I know it sounds like we're shitting on the movie, and we're really not. I'm really not trying to. I want to understand the choices. That's what I think I think we're both trying to get at. We just want to understand the angle this director was coming from.
Poor choices they made while making this movie. So what are some things you would change to maybe make it better?
Well, here, I got a little paragraph written right here. The things I would have changed to make this movie better. Look at that. A score that made sense, because the score has it's got chanting and it's got this ritual thing going on that doesn't fucking make sense. Actual atmosphere. You shot this movie in an abandoned hospital. You should have been able to capitalize on that. Better lighting. The killer being less stiff and silly. Again, being that he was to me the most charismatic character out of everybody.
Yeah.
A better emphasis on the holiday of Valentine's Day and actual gore and makeup effects. Because most of the kills, there's not a lot of gore. It's mostly just kind of gags. When the one guy gets stabbed in the throat, it's clearly on the side of his neck, but the way they shoot it, you can't see it. There's a couple of blood sprays, but I would have liked to have seen gore. I would have liked to have seen this guy's head get cut off with the saw. Yeah. Jack, whatever his fucking name is.
They didn't have the Tom Savini budget for this movie, I guess. They didn't. You mentioned the Prowler. The Prowler is known for the gore effects because they're fucking brutal. I thought Dr. Saxon's death scene, getting whacked with the axe, was pretty cool. The acid to the face was pretty good. There were a couple of, I think I mentioned them before. I thought some of the gore was okay, but a lot of it was off screen. It was the person was out of frame and you just see blood and stabbing. Right. But honestly, I've seen worse horror movies, especially I've seen worse slasher movies where one person dies the entire movie or two, and it's horrible, But I agree with a lot of what you said that would make it better. It's just so odd. It's 1981. The score should have been 100% synthy or something. That would have definitely helped this movie.
It didn't make sense.
It's almost like they use stock music in the movie. That's kind of what it comes off as. I also think maybe having the character of Jack be a little more involved. Maybe have him enter the hospital and you're following Jack through all the different rooms while he's looking for Susan. And then he gets killed. So you're rooting for him. You know what I mean? As a hero. Mm-hmm. There's no hero in this movie. It's just Susan being held down, tied down, drugged, getting told she has to stay there one thing after the other. She doesn't come off as a badass final girl at all in this movie.
No, she's just bland. She's a very bland character. And, you have these scenes with her ex-husband. They're sitting in the apartment, him and his kid. The phone's ringing. He's got a knife in his hand, and he's acting very strange.
Yeah.
It's they're trying to purposely fool you, but they're trying too hard. That's the thing. They're trying too hard to make you think every single person on screen is the bad person. Killer.
Yeah. It's tough, dude. See, with slasher movies like this, again, I feel you can't, your expectations 90% of the time, and I'm sure this won't be the last one we talk about on the show, but I feel your expectations have to be super low with most of them, because the ones that we all know and love are good for a reason, and the bad ones are bad because of shit like this movie did, where you just don't care. And again, I think if you're into bad movies, I feel you could possibly enjoy this. If you want to watch something a little different.
See, it's funny you say that, because I'm pretty good at finding things I like, even in the worst of situations with films. And this one, I couldn't. I just couldn't. And I rated it 0.5 star on on Letterboxd. There's just nothing redeemable about it. And when I was telling Sheila this is the movie we're covering, she goes, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." And then I literally voice texted her and said, "Skip it." I said, "It's not worth watching. It's not worth watching."
I sat on the couch and listen, Ninja 3: The Dominion is one of my favorite movies, and it's a bad movie, but I love that movie.
It's silly.
But that movie has a great soundtrack, a great score, a ridiculous premise. It's got a great like main character, like what is it, Lucinda Dickey? I think Lucinda Dickey's her name.
I don't know her name, but it's an amazing movie.
That's who it is. Like, she's great. She's a babe in the movie, respectfully. Like, you know, like there's a lot to that movie that I really love, but it's a shitty movie. When I was watching this, I actually appreciated all the bad choices because they were so like. I sometimes put myself in the shoes of a filmmaker as like an indie filmmaker. I'm like sitting there, I'm like, what poor choices? Like, someone thought that was a good idea. Like, obviously the husband is not the killer, the ex-husband, because he's with the daughter at another location. Yeah. So even faking him holding the knife makes zero sense. Or even Dr. Saxon. Like, at a time I was like, is it him because of him being a creep? Oh no, it's not him. It's definitely not him. He just took an axe to the back of the head. You know, I get your side of it. And listen, on Letterboxd, I'd give this a 1 star. Just because I thought some of the tense moments were well done. Like I said repeatedly. But that's most fair. Of it is pretty low end. You have any closing thoughts on X-Ray, Dave, before we wrap up here with this fucking movie?
No, we basically covered everything. It's just, and again, it makes sense that this thing was slapped together because it feels like it was slapped together. And do I think it could have been something better? Of course. I would have loved to have seen it go the route of, it was all in Susan's head.
Or even supernatural.
She would,
something more
something
supernatural,
like that. But it tried too hard. It tried too hard to be a slasher. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It probably wasn't written. It was probably written as some other shit, and they just converted it into a slasher film. Someone wrote this script in like 2 days and was like, they just were like, all right, we're making this fucking movie.
I never even heard of this movie. You brought it up, and I was like, oh, okay. And I had no expectations. And once I was watching, I heard the score, and I was just like, I don't know about this. And yeah.
Look, these are my closing thoughts. If you want to watch a shitty slasher movie that is loosely themed around Valentine's Day, I'd recommend it.
Very loosely themed.
It's not high on people's it's not up there with like My Bloody Valentine, both the original and the remake, and Valentine, because it's not up there for a reason. But if you want to watch like a deep cut, oddball, strange experiment of a slasher film, I'd recommend X-Ray. You might be like, what the fuck, half of the time, but you might enjoy a thing or two from time to time. Again, it all depends on your taste for these type of movies.
Harry. It's not Harry. It's Harold. Remember? It's Harold.
So that was X-Ray, a.k.a. Hospital Massacre, a.k.a. Ward 13, a.k.a. Be My Valentine, or else, a.k.a. Tommy Valentine. Had to just throw Tom in there.
We love you, Tom.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Haunted Hangover. And check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Haunted Hangover 31.
And if you can rate and review us, that would be greatly appreciated. And on behalf of the entire Haunted Hangover family, we'd like to wish you all a happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day, guys.